You do not simply taste sugar with your mouth. You taste it with your gut, with your nervous system, with a network of sensors distributed throughout your digestive tract that has been reporting caloric information to your brain since long before your ancestors had words for any of it. This is why artificial sweeteners, despite perfectly mimicking the taste of sugar on the tongue, do not satisfy cravings the way sugar does. The gut knows the difference. The vagus nerve reports the absence of actual calories. And the brain, not receiving the deep signal it was expecting from the intestinal sensors, keeps the wanting system running, keeps driving the search, keeps telling you that you haven't actually found what you were looking for. You can fool the tongue. You cannot fool the gut-brain axis. But here is where the story takes the turn that most people miss. Because all of this, the dopamine system, the innate sweetness preference, the gut-brain caloric sensing, all of it evolved in an environment where sugar was rare, where the average human might encounter a genuinely sweet food a handful of times per week or per month, where the craving that drives you towards sweetness was calibrated against a reality in which sweetness was hard to find and worth pursuing with everything you had. You do not live in that environment. The average modern person in an industrialized country consumes somewhere between 60 and 100 grams of added sugar per day. Not sugar occurring naturally in whole fruit and vegetables. Added sugar, refined and concentrated and inserted into drinks, sauces, breads, condiments, cereals, yogurts, and hundreds of other products where it has no obvious business being. The wanting system in your brain was tuned for scarcity. You live in a flood. And a system tuned for scarcity does not know how to respond to a flood. It just keeps wanting, because it has no off switch for abundance. It was never given one, because abundance of sugar was never a problem your ancestors needed to solve. Researcher Robert Lustig, a neuroendocrinologist at the University of California, San Francisco, has documented what he calls the fructose trap, the way the specific kind of sugar most heavily added to processed foods disrupts the normal feedback loop that signals fullness. Most nutrients, when consumed, trigger a hormonal cascade that eventually reaches the hypothalamus and says stop. Enough. The signal arrives. Appetite decreases. But fructose, Lustig's research suggests, takes a different metabolic path. It is processed primarily by the liver, not the gut or the muscle. And unlike glucose, it does not trigger the same insulin response or the same leptin signaling that tells the hypothalamus the body has been fed. You can consume large amounts of fructose and the satiety signal remains absent or blunted. The brain, not receiving the stop message, keeps eating, keeps wanting, not because of weakness, because the chemical signal that would end the craving was never generated. This is why processed food companies spend billions of dollars on what the industry calls the bliss point, a concept developed in part by food scientist Howard Moskowitz, who spent decades optimizing the precise combination of sugar, fat, and salt in food products to maximize what he measured as consumer satisfaction. Not the satisfaction of genuine nourishment, the satisfaction of the dopamine wanting system. The point at which a food generates the maximum craving response without triggering the sensory fatigue that comes from too much of one thing. The bliss point is not a culinary achievement. It is a neuroscientific exploit. A precise calibration designed to engage the most ancient and most powerful appetite systems in the human brain and keep them running at maximum intensity for as long as possible. You were not designed for this. Nothing in your evolutionary history prepared your brain for a food environment deliberately engineered to defeat the very feedback systems that were supposed to protect you from overconsumption. Your ancestors ate honey until the honeycomb was empty, then walked away because the honeycomb was empty and there was no more. Your pantry is never empty. The food environment you live in has no natural endpoint, no moment when the sweetness simply runs out. And so your craving, designed for a world with natural limits, runs in a world that has removed them. Understanding this does not immediately fix anything. The wanting system does not care about your understanding of it. Dopamine does not respond to intellectual insight. But knowing that your craving is not a character flaw, that it is an ancient, sophisticated, evolutionarily honed response to an environment that no longer exists, changes the terms of the conversation you have with yourself every time you reach for something sweet. You are not failing. You are running a 2 million-year-old survival program in a world it was never built for. You told yourself you would stop after one. You always tell yourself that. And now you know exactly why that is the hardest promise in the world to keep. Because the part of your brain making the promise and the part driving the craving are not the same part. They never were. They just have to share the same body. In the same modern world. With the same ancient hunger that has been looking for sweetness since long before there was anything sweet enough to satisfy it.